caterer. Mother of bride found a single spot on a knife on a single setting. Demanded that the entire reception, $60,000, be free. She was not writing the check, so she was shot down pretty quickly. But there was much rage. So this video will be a bit different. I fell down a pretty deep rabbit hole last night while browsing Reddit about terrible wedding experiences. So instead of all the comments being from the same thread, there's posts from about 8 different ones in this video. I'm also sick as a dog. RIP and peace me. Thanks for watching. Do all the YouTube things. Thanks and be aware of Bridezilla. I was my sister's maid of honor. During a peak planning time, our aunt, her godmother, passed away. I kept trying to get in touch with my sister all day that day. When I finally reached her, I explained I had been trying to speak with her all day to let her our aunt had died. I got blasted about how busy she is, and then she ripped into me about where I stood with my tasks. She was pretty rotten the day of the wedding too. The best was 2 years later I'm getting married, and she's screaming at me over the phone how I didn't help her, forced her to buy a dress she didn't want, and let her florist ruin her flowers. We are not close. Set an 8-year-old boy on fire. The story: at my cousin's wedding. Reception is outdoor, under a tent. The MC announces that the famous Chef Duffy will be presenting his famous flaming chicken and everyone should give him a big round of applause. Chef Duffy comes running out carrying a sheet pan with brandy soused chicken set on fire. He slips on the dance floor and the chicken flam falls under the folding chair of a child and rapidly turns into a ball of flame. Bystanders quickly jump into action and put the fire out, and there is no harm to the child. The videographer stayed with the shot, and to this day, when my cousin and his wife are feeling down, they pop in the wedding tape. Always good for a laugh. I used to work at a place that did weddings, so have a couple of stories. We once had the father of the bride come to the bar mid-ceremony for a pint. I had to turn him down as we aren't allowed to serve alcohol during the ceremony. There was the time a different father of the bride got drunk, managed to cover both himself and a toilet cubicle in copious amounts of stuff, then blame every other bloke for it. Seen the odd bit of domestic violence and had to call the police. We had some reception guests turn up uninvited for the main event. They had super picky dietary requirements, 2 gluten-free vegans, and they got very upset and started complaining that we didn't have enough suitable food for them. We cater for who we are told will be present, and guests have to let people know their dietaries beforehand. But we do always keep a bit of extra veggie/vegan stuff on hand for the inevitable. They moaned at least 4 separate members of staff when we were clearly all already running around busy and took up so much time. The manager went over and had a quiet word with the bride, who let us know they weren't even supposed to be there, and she threw them out. They left and still came back for the evening reception, despite all of this. Wedding band guitar player here. Drunken gorilla-sized groom physically attacked us when we cut off the music after already going over our contracted time an hour. Mother of the groom got into the mix and pulled him back. Bride was in tears. Best man pulled out a Bluetooth speaker and kept the party going. We did not get a 5-star review, so that was a red flag. They lasted a few months. Wedding videographer here. Had a couple fly us out to Iceland for their engagement shoot. Now the first couple of days were fine and everything looked okay, but in Iceland, some lodging options aren't very luxurious. The groom chose to book what was essentially a tiny bunkhouse, the ones meant for those summer camps, and the bride lost it and complained the whole night. Next morning things are pretty tense and our team continues the shoot as planned, even though it is incredibly awkward. Most of our plans fall through because they start arguing in front of a beautiful solitary glacier for 2 hours. Our team can hear them yelling at each other half a mile away because there is literally no one else around for miles. We finish up whatever we could of the last day of the shoot and awkwardly said our goodbyes. Later on I learn that they broke up a month before the wedding. Wedding videographer here. I try to get to know both people beforehand so I can work in their hobbies/unique traits into my product. A big red flag is when one person is clearly trying to change the other. I had one dude who loved poker, craft beer, cigars, hanging with his rowdy friends, video games, etc. I planned a cool shoot where I had all his friends in an old west saloon and he sees his bride-to-be, etc. But she steps in and declares he won't be doing any of those things anymore. Poor bastard just sat there in silence as I awkwardly had to plan them shopping for a Yorkie puppy instead. Halfway through post-production after the wedding, he called and said he was getting an annulment. I wanted to say, could have told you so, but I try to stay neutral. Green flags are just the opposite, embracing the other person's habits/hobbies/interests, basically not being a controlling freak show. I'm a little late to this one. I'm not a wedding planner, but I'm a musician. I played a wedding last year. The bride and groom were fantastically lively, beautiful people. I couldn't help but like them, even though in the lead up, if probably only spent an hour in their company. Anyways, the bride wanted me to play at the ceremony, just acoustic guitar and singing outside the church, for the guests as they walked in. They invited me to the wedding and reception, so I wasn't just there for an hour and then went home. About a week before the wedding, the bride asked if I'd also mind playing their first dance song. I of course said yes, I was going to be there anyways. She wanted me to play Thinking Out Loud. So fast forward to the day of the wedding, everything is going according to plan. About 10 minutes before the first dance is due to happen, I go and get my guitar. The groom's mother followed me and basically confronted me and told me not to play that song and instead wanted me to play Can't Help Falling in Love because it was her favorite song and she wanted her son to do that. I very politely informed her that my agreement was with the bride and groom and therefore I'd play the Ed Sheeran song. She wasn't happy, went on a rant. I don't remember what she said, I wasn't paying attention, and she ended it with I'm paying for this wedding, and I don't care what that slut wants, you will play what I tell you to, or you won't get paid. So I told her of course I would play her song. After all, me being a poor unemployed musician couldn't possibly have any other gigs or a source of income, and was desperately relying on the $150 that an hour of singing at a wedding ceremony would bring me. And then I got up to play, did what the bride wanted, making sure to stare at the mother-in-law for a good 30 seconds, and then afterwards promptly told her to stick her complaining up her ass. I figured it was best to not ruin the happy couple's day, so I waited till they got back from the honeymoon before I told the bride what had happened. And bless her cotton socks, she transferred me $300 on the spot for my troubles. Another story I have is I'm booking a wedding at my store. Young couple comes in and is picking stuff out. As usual, the guy's pretty I don't care about things. Brides are never happy about this attitude. We go through for a bit, but when it comes to picking vest styles they get into a huge argument right in front of me and my colleague. Eventually the groom throws up his hands and says if we can't decide what colors then we just shouldn't get married, and walks out the door and leaves in his car. The girl starts crying in our store while we are just bewildered. My colleague asked if she was okay. She said she was having someone come pick her up and walked out the door crying. Never saw them again. Hands down a famous story in our store. A bride once called, having a meltdown because her friend got engaged as well and was planning to get married in the same year as she was. Apparently it was her special year and not just today. She threw a huge fit that this girl was only getting married to steal her thunder. Yes, because no one else can have a life at the same time as you. Her friend's date wasn't even in the same month or season. Hers was in October and her friend's was in June. Brides sometimes don't think rationally. I worked a wedding where I basically had to play a game of telephone all day long. I'm a photographer and came on site the day of a wedding to meet with the planner/coordinator who promptly told me to be careful around the bride. Apparently at the rehearsal the prior night the bride thought the coordinator was taking too much of her time after took questions and relayed through her bridesmaid that the coordinator was no longer allowed to speak to the bride or even look her in the eye. All communication would have to go through a family member from there on out. I had worked with this coordinator in the past and knew her to be a consummate professional and pleasant person to be around. She had actually assumed the bride would get over her tantrum the day of the wedding, but nope, still no talking or eye contact. The coordinator tried her best to keep the wedding day going smoothly and on time, but it was really tough to do so through proxy. Taking photos took forever because I had to make sure a bridesmaid or sister was always with us to tell the couple where to stand and how to pose. It was one of the most awkward jobs I ever had. Also should mention that when I came on site for the wedding, I was able to locate the bride by the sound of her screaming at her hair/makeup artists. By the time I came into the bridal suite, she had switched to screaming at her bridesmaids for looking prettier than her and made them change their hairstyles to look uglier. After I was done with the getting ready portraits, I found the groom outside on a balcony just smoking a cig and staring into the sun with the longest sigh I've ever heard in my life. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. This is my super happy cat.